that even if we were eating a perfect ancestral diet, which, listen, none of us are, okay? I don't care how carnivore you are, none of us are eating an ancestral diet, because even if you're 100% carnivore, that's not ancestral, because we never had 100% carnivores in the history of human civilization. But that's another whole video topic. But the thing is the closer we can get to ancestral living, not just in the food we eat, but in the way we live, expose ourselves to the sun, in the way we raise our children, in the way we get our food, the healthier we are going to be, because all of that impacts our health. Welcome back to the 2KK Uncensored Podcast.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Joe.
And we are the two crazy ketos.
So, I'm a guy.
Yes, you are.
And I like things like Braveheart.
Oh, yeah.
And Spartacus.
Now we're talking.
And Home Improvement. You know, Tim Allen. Right? And we associate all of that with manliness and being ancestral and providing. And how does that have anything to do with the keto carnivore lifestyle? Well, a lot, because we talk all the time how we need to eat and live ancestrally.
Well, and for the ladies, it's the same. I mean, I'm a gatherer, right? So I want to gather everyone around the table, and I want to be perfectly present, whether I am fixing something in my home, making my home comfortable, or I am caring for my children. I want to be 100%, present. I want to be an amazing teacher to my kids and grandchildren. I want to just sit down and have them encircle me and listen to my wisdom, and also us have time for all of those things. Yeah, ancestral is where it's at, baby.
Okay, here's the problem.
Yes.
Though many of us in the keto carnivore lifestyle may be eating ancestrally, we do not live ancestrally. And it's funny because I have like a few notes of different ways that we don't really live ancestrally, but we should, because they would improve our health. And you just listed off a whole bunch more things. I'm like, yeah, I never thought about that. Like even down to the way we teach our children.
Oh, yeah.
We don't do any of this ancestrally anymore.
Well, and it feels like every generation gets further from it. So we had a lot of lessons taught to us in a boat by my grandfather, just out, not just outside of our home, but like outside in the middle of nowhere, where he would show us vast expanse and celebrate the fact that we were looking at a tree or we were looking at a turtle that had been around for a while, that had maybe been around since he was a child, so that there was a connection to the world around us. Now we, fast forward another generation, my mom is at least taking us after school to sit around a picnic table to have dinner, because she's like, hey, we need to decompress a little bit. As a family, we need to be together to enjoy this meal, but we need to be away from the big piece of furniture, television that we had. We need to be outdoors, get some fresh air after a long day at school.
Boy, talk about making me feel like a crappy parent. We just took our kids to CC's Pizza.
We suck.
And gave them a bunch of tokens to go play video games.
The good thing is we've already established that we sucked, so nobody is like surprised by this.
So what does this have to do with keto and carnivore? Well, it's very simple, that even if we were eating a perfect ancestral diet, which, listen, none of us are, okay? I don't care how carnivore you are, none of us are eating an ancestral diet, because even if you're 100% carnivore, that's not ancestral, because we never had 100% carnivores in the history of human civilization. But that's another whole video topic. But the thing is the closer we can get to ancestral living, not just in the food we eat, but in the way we live, expose ourselves to the sun, in the way we raise our children, in the way we get our food, the healthier we are going to be, because all of that impacts our health. We talk about all the time. Only 80% of your health has to do with food. The other 20% has to do with sleep, stress management, and movement. And that all needs to get closer to an ancestral way of living. And that's what we want to talk about. So we released a video over on our YouTube channel, And in that video, we went over 10 ways that we are not living ancestrally and gave some tips on what we can do about it. Well, on today's podcast, we don't want to go over those 10. We want to talk about some more and really get into some different things we can do to help improve our health. And I'm going to give you the first one that just came to my mind, not even part of my notes. And that is, we say that we're ancestrally eating, but we're not ancestrally gathering or hunting our food. Like going to the grocery store or the refrigerator, that's not exactly hunter-gatherer type behavior.
Well, and I don't think that you have to, grab your shotgun and go into the backyard and see what squirrel happens to be passing through that you can shoot. Wouldn't hurt. I mean, you could do that if you want, but it's not something that's easy for everybody. But I do think that we can start hunting for food in more sustainable ways. Like we can hunt for different farms that grow things that we need, like milk and eggs. And we can, hunt for opportunities to buy locally and not just rely on the grocery store at all, really.
So I grew up fishing.
Sure.
And I know you grew up fishing.
Definitely.
And I grew up hunting. And I grew up growing a lot of our own vegetables. You were definitely more of a city girl other than like the fishing kind of thing. What has it been like moving to a farm and processing your own meat? Has it helped give you a better appreciation and satisfaction for your food?
It definitely kind of reconnects that ancestral connection. Like I know that I'm doing something that my grandmother and my great grandmother before me did. They were involved in the processing process. Like it's Sunday dinner, we need to cook a chicken. You get a chicken from the backyard, you process that chicken so that you can prepare it for your family.
So a couple of years ago when we were at like one of the Keto cons, I think it was before they actually changed the name, we met Dr. Bill Schindler. Mm-hmm. I remember him talking about how he feels like everybody at some point should process their own animal just to get in better connection with their food supply. And at the time we were like, well, that's just silly. What do you think now?
I think that it's important, especially if you're going to be keto or carnivore. I think that you need to have an opportunity to realize the cost of your nutrition. I think you appreciate it more. Waste for us is just not something that we tolerate because we are fully aware that there is a life that is taken so that it might sustain our life. And there's a just primal appreciation. We don't disregard that. We cherish the fact and we're thankful for the fact that something has to lose its life in order for us to live. And if you think that there's no way I could ever process a chicken or a ruminant animal, I'm going to suggest to you, you begin by going on a fishing trip. Going on a fishing trip and just processing a fish that you have caught can begin to help you tap into that. And I think it's an easier entryway for a lot of people.
And I'm not saying everybody has to go out and, kill a deer, plop it on their dining room table and start carving it up. But maybe getting involved, going to a local farm. There's a lot of workshops. If you go into Facebook, you'll see different local farmers and stuff offering workshops where just kind of being part of that experience and helping you get that connection to your food. And this is something that, we started with chickens and we recently had to process a pig because it was attacked by an animal and we had to put it down. And as you said, we don't waste. We don't want to waste any of our food. So this has really helped us to get this appreciation for our food and be like, okay, well, yes, like he got hurt and I could easily just euthanize him and bury him, but that to us was a wasteful thing. So we said, well, we'll process whatever meat we can. And it's really helped me with getting in better connection and not relying so much on going to the grocery store to find food.
But I think that we have to go now beyond the thought of just ancestrally eating. Because I think that even if you don't process an animal, you could tap into just, hey, mostly eating meat, just like we're doing, going back to pre-industrial revolution. I think that's important for us to mention that when we talk about eating ancestrally, we don't have to get into some weird timetable. We can just say, hey, before you could have things year round, no matter where you lived, that's ancestral. And I think we eat ancestrally, but there's more to life ancestral wise than just the food.
Yeah. We can look at the way we consume information.
Sure.
So if you look at ancestrally, and again, you just mentioned pre-industrial revolution, right? And I like to use that term because I don't like to get into the argument with like how old is the earth and all that kind of stuff. So again, look at pre-industrial revolution. Look at before the trains. Remember the Pony Express, right? And even before that, think about Native Americans. Information came very slowly. It was really just oral and maybe carrier pigeons. And when it came to learning, everything was experience-based. Even after invention of the printing press and writing, a lot of people still didn't know how to read. So you learn based on your experiencing, like hands-on learning. You learn to be a carpenter because you did it with your father, or, you learned to trade. Women learned how to sew or cook, being with their moms. Nothing was like watch a video.
Right. News definitely traveled at the speed of walking. And now today we've got 24-hour news cycles. There's constant alerts and endless opinions. And we process more information in a day than our ancestors did in months or years or even a lifetime. The nervous system was not built for global awareness. And we do not have shoulders to carry the burden of all of the problems going on in the world, especially when you think that, you're made aware of problems, but so many of them you are completely powerless to fix.
This is something that I talk about all the time, and I get yelled at, not just by subscribers, but even by close friends and family members, of one of the best things you can do for your health. And we've actually learned this the hard way. One of the best things you can do for your health is turn off the news. Yeah. There is nothing good on the news other than stress that is going to be caused in your life. And you think about it, does it really impact you that much to know if there is a war going on the other side of the world? Is there anything that you can do about it other than stress about it? And here's the thing, if there is something that you absolutely need to know, don't worry. Everybody around you is all watching the news and they will tell you. So if there's something super important, you're still going to find out, kind of the way our ancestors did, through word of mouth.
I think if you want to be proactive, you can still decide, hey, I'm going to pray every day for the world, for the things that I can do and the things that I can't do. I can give, I can help to support charities that are global charities, that if there is something in a certain region, they can reach into that situation and they can use my money to do it. So we're not helpless as far as, we want to be so disconnected because we just don't want to care. I'm saying you can still care, but you glued to the television set, always kept in a high level of stress, is not helping anybody.
And you pegged it, 24-hour news cycles. The second 24-hour news cycles came out, journalism disappeared forever because now they have to fill a 24-hour news cycle. So they come up with controversial things, scary things. They come up with different things to keep you engaged, but all that does is bring more stress.
It's true. And for them, the burden is every single news story that they talk about throughout that entire 24 hours has to be the front page headline. It has to be an attention grabber because you haven't purchased into this singular newspaper and then it's up to the reader to read all the way through. So they have to constantly bombard you with stressful things, even, good things sometimes, but stressful things that are keeping you glued to the television set. And it's just really not sustainable.
Okay, next one. How about attention span?
Well, ancestrally, we would have long periods of focused attention, right? I mean, think about crafting. When you see some of like old-timey quilt making or very detailed sewing where people would make like doilies and dresses. Think about tool making, artwork. These were things that required focused attention for very long periods of time. Now we have very fragmented attention.
Now we have my favorite term. I'm a good multitasker.
No, you're not.
Okay, can we get this right out there now? There is no such thing as multitasking. Nobody can multitask. It's not possible. In order to multitask, you have to be able to do 2 or more things at the same time and be good at all of them. That's not possible. Your brain does not allow you to do that. One thing will always be sacrificed to do the other one better. A simple example. Fold laundry and watch television. A lot of people do that, right? You fold laundry and you watch television. One of them is being sacrificed. Either A, you're not as focused on the television as you would like to be or should be. That's like Korean dramas, right? We like Korean dramas. Korean dramas require us to read subtitles. So if I'm folding laundry, how am I going to do that while I'm reading subtitles? So one of them is not going to get your full attention. You may think you're multitasking, but you're not. But that has become everybody's goal. I want to be a really good multitasker, but in reality, our attention span is 5 seconds.
Well, and we're getting 5-second dopamine hits. Like all of these different platforms are really capitalizing on the fact
TikTok.
Well, we rarely sit in uninterrupted focus. I mean, when is the last time that you even went to the bathroom without your phone? Like, why do you need your phone while you're going to the bathroom?
Okay, point of order. I don't do that. I never understood the phones, and I never understood like going to the bathroom with a newspaper or a magazine. My thing is get in, poop, and get out. I don't want to sit in the smell.
Well,
I do know that it is something that occurs a lot.
Well, I would say that you definitely attempt, if I'm throwing you under the bus now, I think you definitely attempt to watch television in the evening and be checking on Facebook groups or things to see if people answered questions or stuff like that.
I am absolutely guilty in pretty much every other area in my life. But the pooping thing, I want to poop and get out because I don't want to smell it.
Well, as long as that makes you feel better than other people.
Okay, next one. Silence.
Silence was normal. I know it's hard for you to think about that being married to me, that silence is ancestrally normal. But natural sounds really did dominate. Things like the wind, animal sounds, water. I think moving here to the farm has resensitized us to that. It was funny, when you first start RVing, and certainly when we first started moving to the farm, we all of a sudden heard stuff outside. When you're living in a concrete house in the suburbs, you don't really hear stuff going on outside except for whatever, music your neighbor may be playing in their garage, if their garage door is open. But to hear birds tweeting and to hear squirrels running up the tree and moving leaves and to hear the rooster in the morning, that really helps put us more in touch with sounds that our ancestors would have heard.
It's interesting because when we first moved here to the farm, I remember that first month just almost wanting to sleep outside because you would open the door.
Stars.
And you would see stars. I mean, I know that's not silence, but all you heard was the frogs and the crickets. You heard nature because we live in the middle of nowhere. There's not a light outside. It is pitch black, and it really allows your senses to get in tune with those different sounds. And it's funny part is you're saying that you mentioned the rooster. Since moving into the house out of the RV, so we moved from the RV into the house on Christmas Eve. When we were in the RV, we were very close to the chicken coop.
And not as insulated.
And the walls are kind of thin. And you would hear every chicken cluck the rooster all day and all night. Because if you didn't know, roosters don't just crow in the morning. They crow all day. But now that you're in the house and there's more insulation and we're further away from that, you don't hear it as much. And I honestly miss it.
Well, the good news is we do raise up a lot of birds and babies. And so you have that sound kind of around you, permeating the background. So we do have access to it. But yeah, when we were living in the suburbs, what we heard was podcasts in the car. We heard TVs going on in the background. We always had our phone in our hands. And I think that what's happening is it's coming to a point where people can't even tolerate quiet. Like it's almost painful. Like they feel like they need to fill the void.
And, there's something about the term silence is golden. And yes, a lot of times that's used in like, just keep your mouth shut. You won't get in trouble. But sometimes when you just sit in silence, and think about this, and I know I'm guilty of it. Like you mentioned podcasts in the car. When is the last time you just went on a car ride and just didn't turn on the radio? Didn't turn on a YouTube to listen to, didn't listen to a podcast, didn't even talk to the person in the car, just allowed yourself to drive, focus on your driving, and then maybe also like have some time to pray and be in quiet and really regather your thoughts. And then also add in, how many times do you go in a car? And I know we are guilty of this. I can't think of, with all of the thousands of miles that we drive. Last year, we drove over 12,000 miles in our RV. How many of those trips did we just sit and talk to each other without a radio or a podcast going? Just have a conversation between a husband and wife. No, it was always revolving around, let's listen to this podcast. Let's listen to this Bible teaching. That's a great thing, but we never took time to just connect to each other as a spouse. And that really can affect your health and your relationship.
And the kids are watching. Child development is definitely another thing that we need to think about when it comes to like, what kind of authentic childhood are the kids living? You see all of these different marketing campaigns that are trying to suggest that a kid can't have an authentic childhood without sugar. We know that's a lie. But what is something that a child ancestrally needs? In the past, children climbed up trees, they ran around, they explored, they took risks. We joke about being 70s and 80s kids, but
drank from the hose and didn't wear a bicycle helmet.
We learned through physical challenge. What is that like today, though?
Well, if you look at today, kids have screen time.
Sure.
Their life is very structured, and that could be a positive, but I think in many cases, this very structured life can be a negative because they're not experiencing things. Everything is about risk avoidance. And I don't want to see kids go out and really get maimed and stuff like that.
Don't be reckless.
But I think too, like as a kid, taking my bicycle to the local empty lot, and we would create ramps out of dirt and pieces of wood, and we would jump barrels, and I even think about our kids when they were growing up, like climbing up on things. It wasn't this whole idea of don't drink from the hose because it's going to kill you. I think even today, what are we doing to our kids by dousing them with the amount of like hand sanitizer? What is that doing to the immune system? Everything is about, oh my gosh, I can't get near a germ. But that affects the child's development.
Well, it definitely affects their creativity. I think that even, developing an imagination, we try to provide the imagination for them. For instance, they sell fort kits. Now, you can go on Amazon and buy a build your own fort kit. Well, we built forts when we were kids, but what did we do? You had to collect
chairs and bed sheets.
You had to collect items. You had to hunt and gather items together, and you had to build a shelter for yourself. And it was very makeshift. It wasn't going to look like the outside picture of a box. It was what you made it. It was your unique interpretation of what your place was going to look like. And I think that we're losing that individuality because even creative play is structured instead of children being allowed to kind of just be kids and come up with their own fun.
I'm sure that there is going to be a whole bunch of people from the Northeast when they hear me say this go, bite your tongue. But I kind of wish I was a kid today with all of the snowstorms the North has been accounting this year, because as a kid, my favorite thing about a snow day was after the plow came through. You didn't experience this growing up in Florida, but the plow would come through and it put these big banks along the street, and especially at your driveway, because then you had to shovel out your driveway, and so you'd have these giant mounds. And my sister and I would literally dig giant forts in the snowbank. That was creative. It literally became like a defend the fort, like you got to dig it out. So you had physical activity there. You were out there in the bitter cold, but you were being creative. Like, I'm going to create windows and lookout towers. And that all really helped to your development and thinking about like how to make it not collapse and everything else. So,
well, and skill competence is something that's important. I mean, ancestrally, you began the process of learning how to build, like you're saying, as a child, because, it was part of your play, and also you're watching your parents. You learn to repair things. You learn to forage. You learn to defend. You learn to navigate. I can remember, when we would be around the beach for long stretches of time. So yeah, I wasn't in a winter state, but we were in a summer state. And we would be just told, go outside. You didn't have a ton of different toys. It was like, you need to forage for sticks and rocks. And we would build these little ecosystems in the sand, and we would build up sand castles and all that kind of stuff. And we'd put crabs in it. And you were just learning about building something and taking care of something. And, when the water would come in, you would learn a way to fortify your structure better. You would learn to fix things and to defend what you were building. And in the modern world, we really outsource everything.
Here's the thing. The way we're set up now in the modern world is if the system fails, most people really do lack basic survival skills. Like, they can't survive at all if even electricity goes out. The thing is that competence builds confidence, but convenience builds dependence. And we have become so dependent on everything being provided to us, down to like little things. It's funny because I was actually in a Facebook group last night, and there was somebody asking if they were being ripped off because a plumber was charging them like $400 for a new toilet. And there were a lot of comments in there, but when you really look down to it, we have done this even as a society where we have really encouraged people to not learn how to do things with their hands. So the people who can do things with their hands, they can charge whatever they want because there's far and few between of them. So the more we can learn to fend for ourselves, the more we can learn to do for ourselves, the less we can rely on other people doing it for us. That helps us in so many different ways.
Well, I think that that's really rooted in the fact that we don't celebrate any exposure to discomfort.
Yes.
So ancestrally, you would experience hunger. You would experience cold. You would experience physical fatigue. There was such a thing as delayed gratification. Now we want vending machine results. We want to say, hey, this is what I want. I'm going to put my quarters in and I want to punch the button and I want the result to come out fast and exactly the way I want it.
Well, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about at the very beginning when it came to our food. That even if we are ancestrally eating, we are not getting our food in an ancestral way. And I know that that's very difficult for most of us, even us. I mean,
sure.
we can't grow all of our own food yet. We're going to try to get more and more there. But the thing is that when you look at our ancestors and being hunter-gatherers, when you look at things like fruits and the starchy vegetables, those things actually get your body to forage. For our ancestors, they would forage by going hunting and gathering. So they would eat these things, which would give them the energy to go find food. our form of foraging is walking 5 feet to the refrigerator. I mean, even look at us, right? So we have a fridge in our house, but then I have a mini fridge in my bedroom. And then we have one in our, like, we try to set it up like I'm within 5 to 10 feet of a refrigerator, many times for drinks, but it's still the point. Like, we don't want to walk more than 5 to 10 feet to even get a drink, that we have mini fridges in our bedrooms. But then you take it further than that. We've even gotten to the point where we don't want to go to the grocery store. Now we use things like Instacart and Uber Eats. Like, we've gotten so lazy as a society that we've gotten so far from the hunter-gatherer that we are willing to pay double the price for somebody to bring it to our house because we're too lazy to go buy it.
It's interesting. As you said, people who are in trades are reaping the benefits financially of deciding to choose something that other people want to avoid. So if you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you're a construction worker, like, you can do things that other people are going to have to have done in their house.
And pay handsomely.
Like, if you can't, do some basic roofing work, you're going to have to hire somebody to patch that roof or, drain out that air conditioner, right? And I think it is the same thing when it comes to resiliency and strength. We all knew when it's wintertime or when it's, a hot day, there's going to be some discomfort in order for you to go get the things that you need. So even when it was winter, it was snowing outside. If you don't have all the groceries you need, you would at least have to move your body enough to get to the grocery store, carry it home, and put it away. And sometimes this was challenging. I can remember visiting your mom and your sister in upstate New York, going and getting stuff in the winter and bringing it back to the house, climbing up the stairs. It was a lot of work to just shop and get the things that you need. But now what's going to happen is you're going to have DoorDashers and Uber Eats people, and they're going to have the resilience for the whole community.
Then you add in my favorite thing, and that is voice control. Like, we've gotten so lazy that we don't even want to, and I'm guilty of this, we don't even want to get out of bed or off the couch to go change the temperature, right? You used to have to get up and walk across the room, but now it's, Alexa, turn off the AC, right? Or pick up your phone and program it. It's like we've gotten even beyond remote controls that we want to use voice activation. And all of that is affecting our movement. We're just getting lazier and lazier and lazier as a society. And this overall affects our health.
And you can say that, okay, it's saving time. All of these things are saving time. What are we using that time for? Shouldn't that time be way extra time to get out in nature, or way more time to be single-minded in whatever task we're in? Like, let's say we're talking to our kids. We don't need to have the television on while we're talking to our kids. Can't we just do one thing at a time? Hey, we've got all this time we've saved. Where did we put it? Are we just taking the time that it takes to walk from here to the air conditioner, to the thermostat and change it? And instead we're plugging in that time into more news coverage,
right?
Or more Facebook time. Because that's another thing. We have lost our ability to even have face-to-face conflict resolution.
Yeah, if you look at ancestrally, when you had a dispute, it happened in person. It happened with a tribe. I mean, you'll see people say, well, if you look at it ancestrally, like, they died at a younger age. But they died, generally, the cause of death was wars and starvation.
Right.
It wasn't cancer from Wi-Fi and the pollutants in their food. The biggest cause of death was war and starvation. Neither one of those is a giant issue today. But when we look at, you didn't have Facebook. You couldn't just hit the block or delete button on Instagram because you didn't like somebody.
But now there's all kinds of constant online arguments. Social media outrage is absolutely rampant. I mean, you find other social media personalities that are in fights, and then there's like a whole following of the fight. And so we don't know how to appropriately resolve conflict. And unfortunately, we see it just pouring into families where you're really treating family members your precious family tree as if it's just hit the unfollow button, like just block them.
I'm going to say something very politically incorrect here, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that is, no amount of politics, no amount of any of this kind of stuff that you see on social media should get in the way of your family. That you need to have a connection with family. We taught our kids very early on that as you grow up, the only thing you have is your family. That your friends will come and go, but your family, your brothers, they're here for you as long as you're on the earth. And I encourage everybody that regardless if a family member has a different political opinion or anything else, that you need to cherish them for the person who they are, and that is a loved one and a family member.
I think you have to decide, what are the boundaries going to be? Because, everybody isn't safe, but that doesn't mean that nobody's safe.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that it isn't your responsibility sometimes to make the peace where you can.
That's right.
Sometimes that means you're not going to bring up certain topics. Sometimes that means that you are going to control a little bit of the access. But we're seeing people who aren't even interested in coming to the negotiation table anymore to talk to moms and dads and grandparents because they
makes me cry.
It makes me cry because they've been labeled, toxic just because, maybe they share a difference of opinion. And we just walk away. And ancestrally, because we're looking at this from an ancestral viewpoint, that is not the human experience. That is not the way things are handled.
Here's my view. If I can find something positive about a vegan lifestyle, right? And again, I don't necessarily agree with eating that way for health. But if they're doing because they love animals, I can get on board with that. I love animals, but there's always some kind of commonality. And you can just discuss that and just agree to disagree on the other things and move on. But please cherish your family and your loved ones. So another thing, and this is a really big one, and when it comes to affecting your health, and that is work-rest cycles. So if you look at ancestrally, you would have intense work, and then that would be followed by true rest. Rest wasn't scrolling on your phone. It was actual recovery. And it's funny, I over the weekend, I worked a tournament for lacrosse and I worked 12 games. And that was in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day. We happened to be in a heat wave for Florida at this time of the year. It was in the high 80s on the field, and it was intense running, over 26 miles of walking and running on the field in just a few hours. And at the end of the day, boy, my head hit that pillow. Anthony and I got back to our hotel room on Saturday night, and he put the television on, and I was asleep so fast, I couldn't even tell you what he was watching. But that was intense work followed by intense rest. And that is really how our body is designed to be.
Now work bleeds right into the evening. Rest,
guilty.
Rest, quote unquote, means more screen time and not nervous system recovery.
Guilty.
I think this is the biggest challenge for us, Joe, for real, because, if you're in social media, when is your day really done? It's not.
We start our day by 8 a.m., with farm chores and then, you're making posts. All of that starts somewhere
early,
around 8 a.m. And on average, I'm working probably on the computer. If I'm not doing other farm chores or doing something around the house or going to work at a lacrosse game, even when I do go work a lacrosse game, I came home from a game last night, what do? I go in and I sit down on my computer for about a half hour to an hour. It's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I've got to get some more work done. And then my rest after that work, because it just spilled into not a 9-to-5 job, my rest then becomes, I'm going to go relax with the television on.
There you go.
Right? So even if I had an intense work day, my resting is not closing my eyes and going to sleep.
So it was interesting, while you're gone at this tournament with Anthony, my mom happened to be in town. And so I just had her come and sleep over with me at my house. And so aside from one interview that I did that weekend, the rest of the time was just me and my mom visiting. look, watching the animals, playing with the animals, listening to nature. Like we did, go shopping, but we were walking around, moving our bodies, seeing stuff. And it was true relaxation. And then it was funny. I was joking with her. I had so much energy still left over in the evening because I had rested my soul. I'd rested my mind. I had allowed myself to be off the clock. And I think sometimes, even though, yes, there's work still to be done tomorrow, it needs to be placed in tomorrow. You can only do what's possible in this 24 hours. Stop trying to rob tomorrow by just creating a binge where the day never ends.
Next one is sleep environment. And we talked about this in the video, but I think it's really important to mention again, because I think this is probably one of the biggest areas that most of us can immediately improve our ancestral living by focusing on our sleep. And it comes in a lot of different ways. If you look at ancestrally, they slept in pretty much darkness other than whatever light they got from the moon or from the stars. But if they were in caves and things like that, or if they were in little huts, they didn't have a lot of lights. You didn't bring a big fire inside of like your straw tent or house that you've built. So they had darkness, they had cooler temperatures, very minimal noise other than nature. And the natural sleep surfaces that supported posture and spinal alignment were really relative to their environment. But we have very different ways that we sleep today.
Yeah, now we have a lot of old unsupportive mattresses that disrupt sleep quality. That's why we try to point people to mattress companies like Brooklyn Bedding. Get yourself a good mattress. You need to minimize your light pollution. You need to move electronics away from you. We have warmer rooms now because that feels cozy, but really our bodies need cooler temperatures to sleep. We say that sleep is important, but the environments that we're building sabotage that rest. A lot of times I think what we do is we pump up those bedtimes to later and later, and we binge watch more and more television because we are telling ourselves that's the reward we get in the evening for adulting, but it's not a reward. It really is robbing from ourselves.
And the last one I would say would be our identity.
Sure.
And our sense of belonging.
Very different.
If you look at the ancestral way of living, they had a clear identity, whether it be their tribe, what their role in the tribe was, their responsibilities, how they contributed to society. And it's very different than what we have in modern day.
I think that in ancestral times, people celebrate the fact that they contribute something to the group and they were happy with it. They were satisfied with that. Now we have constant comparison. The Bible talks about, you don't want the ear and the eye and the hand like arguing with one another over who's more important, but we have constant comparison now, right? We have belonging that's often based on algorithms, not proximity. So while it is important for us to have an online community, it's also important to continue building up local groups. That's why we always cheer on local meetups. Like everybody's a part of the 2KK family, and we try to meet at least annually on a 2KK cruise, because then the whole family can get together. But that's not going to tide you over 365 days to the next cruise. So it's really important that we meet locally. And we do try to travel as much as we can to try to help foster that. We're looking forward to, the next recent one is going to be a meetup in Indiana. And I'm looking forward to that because I think that we need to meet in proximity. Humans evolved needing to belong in order to survive. I mean, we see that. It's kind of funny. We see that with our animals, where you see them grouping together in groups to survive. If they're the new kids, if they're the new chickens on the block and there's older chickens around, the newer chickens, the younger chickens kind of flock together because otherwise they're going to get pecked by the older ones, right? So it's important for us to have belonging. Now we kind of just chase belonging digitally. Like we subscribe to things, we're big fans of movie actors, television actors, but that's not a relationship. It's like we know them, but they don't know us, and we need to be known.
In the end, you can eat ancestrally, but if your nervous system and your environment and your sleep and your movement and your attention and your stress are all completely modern, you're only really being ancestral at the fork. And the problem with that is only 80% of your health is reflected by the food. We have to work on the other 20%. And as we said in the video, you're not going to be able to eat or live, rather, a complete ancestral lifestyle. I don't think most of us are going to go live out in the middle of the woods like a hermit and turn off all electronics and never use anything modern again. But I think that we can begin to take a look at things and go, how can we get back to nature a little bit, whether it be going on camping trips or turning off the LED lights at certain times of the day, or just eating to like daylight hours.
Could be not leveraging so much convenience and just saying, hey, I have a, Uber Eats account, but I'm going to go ahead and go to the grocery store on my own. I'm going to walk when I could outsource this. I'm going to maybe learn a new skill or return to a skill that I've had that maybe I've abandoned for a while. We've got good stuff on the inside of us. And I think that it's worth being invested in and built up. We can tap into that ancestral life. It's still there.
Let us know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Now, while you're down there, please do us a favor. Make sure you check out some of our channel sponsors like Salty, which is the official electrolyte of Two Crazy Ketos. Now, we do want to say thank you very much for listening to our podcast. And again, make sure you are following us on all of our different social media platforms. And also, again, community is super important. Make sure you go join our Mighty Networks group at members.twocrazyketos.com. And until next time, I'm Joe.
And I'm Rachel.
And we are
the Two Crazy Ketos.